This episode is proudly sponsored by The Helix, a new innovation district located in New Brunswick, New Jersey, the heart of the Northeast Corridor. The Helix provides a critical ecosystem for innovation by offering a range of physical environments, a vibrant community of leading innovators, and a strategic central location on the Northeast Corridor. The Helix will uniquely mix workspaces, classrooms, laboratories, venues, and collaborative environments, creating a dynamic community and setting for innovative minds. Universities, startups, Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, researchers, and many others will all call the Helix home. Thus far, the Helix has assembled a community of innovative private and public organizations, such as Rutgers Health, the New Jersey Innovation Hub, RWJ Barnabas Health, Hackensack Meridian Health, universities from Ireland and Israel, and others. The Helix is where ideas will come to life. To learn more, visit helixnj.com.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Politi here, Fonseca, Lanny. Holiday season, folks. Lots going on in Rutgers athletics. We're going to talk about more good news. Players sticking around with the Scarlet Knights football team. Going to talk about the big contract extension for Greg Schiano. Everyone expected it, but still when you see the numbers, you're like, whoa, hey, big news. We're going to dive in a little bit to the Twitter kerfuffle, I guess. We'll call it that. If you were on social media, you know what I'm talking about. We'll talk about that in a few, but we need to start with the big news. At least I think it's the big news because I'm so rarely right. And it appears that I am right. And you guys wouldn't listen to me about Rutgers going into the portal and getting a quarterback. And here we are. They are going into the portal and they haven't gotten a quarterback yet, but it sure looks like they are actively pursuing a quarterback. Ethan Kaliakmanis, practicing that pronunciation. So yeah, are you going to tell me I'm right or am I still wrong here? Go ahead, Brian.
Greetings from the bushes of my apartment, and I hope it's okay that we're talking about this publicly and you're all consenting to this conversation. First of all, good morning. Happy holidays. So a couple things. One, sorry to burst your bubble. Chris Sakonis, a colleague of ours on the beat, is Greek, and he tells me it's Galekmanis.
No, it's not. I listened to the Big Ten Network people. I listened to the Big Ten Network highlights. I wrote it down.
Understood. Are any of those people Greek?
I don't. I'm going to trust.
Caligmanis. We're all going to call him Caligmanis.
I'm
just busting your balls. Anyway, look, you were right. I was very surprised that Rutgers took the plunge and pursued a transfer quarterback. This is the point of no return. Once you pursue a quarterback in the portal and you bring him in for a visit, this is a clear signal to Gavin Wimsatt that there will be competition in the room. And I thought they would not pass that line. I thought they would kind of stay with Gavin, let him feel comfortable as the guy. Clearly, they are taking a risk here because Gavin very well in this age of the transfer portal could decide, I don't want to compete. I am the starter. I thought I was the starter. If you're bringing in competition, I don't want to stick around. I'm going to go somewhere else. That's a risk they're taking. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that is the calculus you have to take. Now, where I am going to defend myself, where I think I'm still right, is that Ethan Kaliakmanis is not a better quarterback than Gavin Wimsatt on my face, undisputably. They are essentially the same player. They have Kaliakmanis is slightly more accurate, but he's not very accurate. Their numbers are pretty similar. He doesn't run it as much as Gavin did, but his efficiency numbers while running are similar. I watched 4 full games of his over the weekend, and he misses a lot of throws deep. He doesn't, to his credit, miss throws 5 feet away from him by 30 feet over the receiver's head. But my point here is this is not a clear upgrade at quarterback that you would hope to get out of the portal. This is a roughly similar player which makes sense that it's him because he has connections to Kirk Shiraka. I'm just saying, like, you're not getting a guy who's coming in as the bona fide starter. You're getting a guy that's coming in to compete to be the starter. That was my point, that this was really the only kind of option they had in the portal as a quarterback. So I think as a nice compromise, I think we were both right, you and I, Steve. How about that?
Pat, who's right? Pat, you take it. You get it to you. Are we both right?
Steve is 100% right.
Because
Brian was like, there's no chance that they're going to bring in a quarterback. And clearly that is incorrect. I just want to make one point that if you're not willing to compete for your starting job at an FBS Power 5 program, you don't really deserve to be the quarterback anyway.
Absolutely.
So if you can't deal with that and a little bit of pressure and adversity, then you're not cut out for it anyway. And I just think, I'm not saying that that's Gavin's philosophy at this point. I just think that if you're going to go that route and just immediately flee, I think that is, you don't have the guts.
Right. And Gavin should enter that competition with an expectation that he will win or can win the job. Has as many starts.
Just like it was with Evan Simon too, right? That was a bona fide competition for a little bit, and Gavin came out the winner.
Right. He has as many starts in the Big Ten as he led this team to a bowl game. I would argue with one point. Like, I don't think that, I know what the stats say. I don't think that Cali Manis is a little bit more accurate. He seems like he is a touch more than just a little bit. Like, from what I've seen, and the numbers when he was last year, the wheels fell off at Minnesota. The numbers when he was under Shiraka and some of those games late in the year, I know it's been floating around. He was a lot more accurate, and with Shiraka calling plays, with better receivers, with a better offensive line, he's stepping into an offense that's going to have a decent offensive line. The Big Ten's leading rusher. We'll talk about it in a minute, but upgraded receiver now. I mean, you would think that would be a benefit to him, and to that point to Gavin Wimsatt, right? I mean, that's also true, but I do think he's an upgrade as a passer.
He is an upgrade as a passer because almost every quarterback in FBS is an upgrade as a passer, right? Gavin was the least accurate quarterback among 157 FBS quarterbacks with at least 125 dropbacks. Kalik Manis was the 13th least accurate quarterback among that group. So what you could point to is that his adjusted completion percentage is higher because their receivers drop balls at some of the highest rates in the country. Like, their receivers, despite the fact Minnesota had better wide receivers, they drop balls to like an unfathomable degree. So you can point to that. Sure. One thing on the competition thing that I think is interesting, there's a report from the Star Tribune, I believe, or the Pioneer Press out in Minnesota, that part of the reason Kalik Manis left is because PJ Fleck would not guarantee him he was the starting quarterback for next year. So in a way, Kalik Manis also fled from competition. I know his father disputed the fact that some mythical quarterback coming in from the portal is not the reason they left, but it is plausible to think that he was the starter, much like Gavin. They have very similar trajectories where they played a little bit as redshirt freshmen. They're the first time full starters as redshirt sophomores. They struggle, and now they're both kind of in a quarterback competition with the coordinator they both spent a year under. The parallels are very interesting. Two former four-star quarterbacks, just all that stuff. To answer your question, is he more accurate? Absolutely. Is every other quarterback in FBS more accurate than Gavin Wimsatt? Absolutely. Is he that much more accurate that I think he's an automatic win in a quarterback competition? I don't think so.
Okay, that's fair. Absolutely. Is he definitely coming, Pat? Do we have a good sense at this point? After talking about it for 10 minutes, are we going to find out he's...
When you think of like stars aligning in every situation, the Soraka connection, right. His father's from New Jersey, it's all lining up. I am surprised that maybe it didn't happen over the weekend though, because right, if everything fell into place, you would think it would just be a done deal then, but it wasn't. And I just want to add that Shiraka's offense is so catered to these third down and short completions and making the easy throws and things like that. So it really is a system fit. And you look at Tanner Morgan and his other quarterbacks, and it just seemed like he wants a guy that can just master his offense. And if he already recruited this guy and played well with this guy, it just seems like you can read between the lines of the situation.
It's got like a Tommy DeVito feel to me with if his agent comes here dressed like Zorba the Greek, and they're handing out zeros to everyone in the stands. I'm trying to think of a good of a good Greek meal there that they could be handing out. It could be something. We could be talking about his equivalent of cutlets. It's exciting. All right, Dymere Miller though. This is a definite. He is coming, and this might be. You could make an argument that this is bigger news to get their biggest target in the portal at wide receiver. The numbers when you read them, you're like, holy cow! You can do that in college football. 90 receptions for almost 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. Pitt, Texas Tech, FAU, a bunch of schools. A lot of them. Rutgers got him. Give me the sense here, guys. Is this as big a deal as it could be, or is there a catch here?
I think it's a really big deal. Rutgers has gone this route before with Jaquay Jackson, plucking him from the Division II ranks, and he turned out to be a pretty good transfer portal addition. You would think that these numbers, of course, are not going to be replicated in any way at the FBS level, but Rutgers clearly needed another receiver. It's a big deal to get it. And, a guy that played at Monmouth down the road is certainly, I'm sure there's plenty of familiarity there and a nice addition. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. Miller gets a shot to prove that he can play at the highest level. Rutgers gets a guy with experience to plug and play.
Brian, do you think the receivers in this team, other than maybe a couple exceptions, this will look like a completely different unit here? I mean, if you get Miller in there, if Chris Long is back healthy, if they finally, I don't know what's going to happen with Nassim Brantley. Everyone keeps asking us, we don't know, they don't know. But just assuming that they do win that appeal, that this could be a completely different set of weapons next year.
Well, what I will say about Miller, what I do know is that he broke the Monmouth single game receiving record. He had a game with 333 yards against New Hampshire. That is more yards in one game than all but 2 Rutgers receivers had all season. Obviously, to your point, numbers are not replicable, but to have a guy that's that prolific that could do that to anybody, any college football team, is a huge addition. To the Jaquay Jackson comparison, because I think that's a good comparison. I think a lot of people make it. Jaquay Jackson was a borderline All-American D2 player. This guy is a consensus FCS All-American, first team All-American. He is inarguably one of the best receivers at the second level, and those guys generally trend really well at the FBS level. Florida State last year had a kid in a similar spot who had a huge year from Albany. So I think you cannot state how big of a deal this is. I think the fact Aaron Young, this is very interesting. He's from the same hometown, Coatesville, Pennsylvania. They played in high school together. He hosted him on his visit. And then after the kid committed, went into the transfer portal and is leaving Rutgers. That kind of is I know we talk about the culture of Rutgers a lot, but for a kid to be willing to do that before leaving the program himself is a very nice sign to what Greg Schiano has built and how this team, even guys that are leaving, want the success of the program. Yeah,
leaving the program on very good terms too. Like Aaron Young just needs playing time. He's not leaving because he doesn't like it here. He's just looked at the situation and made a business decision, right? I mean, you can't blame any kid who does that. I think a lot of the kids that enter the portal did that. Evan Simon, Max Patterson, guys like that. Can't blame a kid for wanting to play, obviously. To your point about the receiver room, I don't know Chris Long. I just don't know you could trust him to stay healthy because he hasn't the last couple of seasons. Nassim Brantley is a complete enigma that we may not find out until the season opener against Howard, if he's on the field or not. Who knows how that's going to work out. I think Christian Dremel coming back is a huge, huge addition for them just by the fact that he was their leading receiver. And if you can make Dymere Miller your top guy and Christian Dremel like a secondary guy, like that is a very nice start to the room. Right. Again, you have a third guy, either Chris Long, Nassim Brantley, even if Fama Toure,
Fama Toure, Ian Strong, there you go. Any of the young guys, even if you had another guy through the portal, I think you have a good base there in the wide receiver room. I don't think you're anywhere near having like a top end receiver room. I think it has a lot of work to do, but I think the floor next season will be higher than it was this past year.
Absolutely, it has to be. No question. All right. The other big piece of news, 6 years, essentially what is a 6-year, $42 million contract extension for Greg Schiano. No surprise. Again, the moment he beat Indiana, we're out there and you're like, okay, well, when are you going to do this? And we figured it would be right around here, right before. Again, he was good. Greg Schiano he's always making sure it's the best impact for recruiting. You get your contract extension a few days before early signing period starts. That's exactly the signal he wants to send to people. He's going to be here, both coordinators get next year. It's a big time commitment. And I just talking to Greg Schiano about this, Pat, it's like, this is the way I mean, Rutgers didn't operate like this in Schiano 1.0. Like, this is a different Rutgers program. You have the resources now for keeping coaches, for making sure your head coach is extended and happy. It's just a different world, and it's a significant amount of money. But I mean, it's what the Big Ten is.
Absolutely, and you really get the sense that Greg has so much trust in his coordinators that he wants them to stay, and he wants these guys to be the leader of his program. And that's why that commitment is also just as important. And that's kind of what didn't happen in the first go around, right? They just had a revolving door of offensive coordinators, and you're putting in a new system every year, and it's almost impossible to find consistency that way. That's certainly led to a lot of issues at Rutgers, but you're bringing back your stud defensive coordinator who put together a top 25 defense along with pretty much every starter on that defense. Shiraka's system, it led to a little bit of improvement this year. Obviously, the running game was much improved. The big picture is the stability that Rutgers has. And like you said, a lot of that is because that's what a Big Ten program has to do. Like, you have to be able to just keep it all together. And, that consistency will be key.
And Flip Dixon adding to the list of guys who are sticking around. Again, we've talked about this a lot, but I think it's even more than 9 out of 10 of the guys you would want to stay have stayed. Everyone other than Max Melton, essentially, at this point, that you would make a list like, we need these guys to stay, have stayed. Brian, it's going to create there's going to be a lot of excitement going into next season. I know they're still got a bowl game here, but this is going to be, people are going to see 6-6 building block returning the entire team. Essentially, right? This is going to go into 2024 with a lot of buzz.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Max Melton, Greg Schiano even admitted he told him to go to the NFL, that it was the right time. And he said he revealed that he played the start of the season with a broken hand, which is pretty nuts. Max Melton posted a story yesterday on Instagram saying true story with x-rays of his hand. So we have medical confirmation that he did break his hand. But yeah, you bring back every 50-50 guy that was on the roster, because I wouldn't classify Max Melton as a 50-50 guy. He was pretty much gone. But every 50-50 guy is back. The floor of your defense is incredibly high. And the ceiling, if you can get Wesley Bailey, who looked like he was limping most of the season, if you get him back to full health and as explosive as he's looked at his best, that's a big bump in edge rusher. You got Mohamed Touré back, who has been your best edge rusher for 3 years. Have him back. You have your linebacker set. You have your defensive line. The only real hole in the defense right now is the middle of the defensive line, defensive tackle. You have 2 guys graduating from there. You probably need to get someone out of the portal to fill in there. They had a guy visiting last weekend, Anthony Johnson from Youngstown State. He ended up committing to Illinois. But you got to see that that's like the one area they have to bolster. But everything around there is just, you have such a high floor. You have guys hoping to make it to the NFL. So it's kind of like a contract year in a way where guys feel like they have to prove themselves. And that's always good to have that extra motivation. And you feel, talking to these guys, unfinished business, job's not done. They feel like 6-6, bowl game is nice. They want to do more. They want to win 8 games. They want to win 9 games. The schedule is favorable to do that. You bring back your coaching staff and your coordinators. Joe Harris-Simiak, a guy who was a contender for a head coaching job at James Madison, was on hot boards for big DC jobs at USC, at Penn State, a proven hot commodity that Rutgers was able to keep. He brings back all his key players. You have developing young players in the pipeline as well. I think Rutgers was going to have a good defense to have a good season. That is set from where I stand, barring any catastrophe, knock on wood. The question is obviously now the offense. How much can they improve their offense? How many more weapons can they give Kirk Shiraka? And who's going to be playing quarterback for Rutgers against Howard? Those are really the big questions left.
Experience the Heldridge Hotel, a luxury hotel that's perfect for both the business and leisure traveler. Ideally located within minutes of Rutgers University, the Heldridge is convenient to all the action and activities at SHI Stadium, Jersey Mike's Arena, and the Rutgers University campus. The moment you walk through the doors of the Heldridge Hotel and Conference Center, you know you're someplace different. A place with an independent spirit and a boutique vibe. A place where you can immerse yourself in your meeting or event as easily as you can the local culture. Located in the heart of the city, the Heldridge lets you experience all that New Brunswick has to offer. Whether you're coming to New Brunswick for a fun weekend with friends, in town for a Scarlet Knights game, or attending a business meeting, book your accommodations today at theheldridge.com.
All right, well, good. That's a good transition to true or false, because that's the first item on the list for you guys. Let's start it. Let's lay it out there. True or false? Ethan Kaliakmanis will be the week 1 starter next season. Pat, what do you think?
I think false. I still think that Gavin, they still believe in him, and it's too early to just change. So I'm going to say false.
Brian?
I think true. If you bring a guy in like that, you don't bring a guy in like that to be your backup. I think he has a great connection with Kirk Shiraka. I think there will be, assuming Gavin Wimsatt stays, which is no guarantee, but assuming he does, I think there will be a spirited competition. I think ultimately Kaliakmanis will beat him out because of his better accuracy. And I think it will be the first time in quite some time at Rutgers where we have a legitimate, like, if he starts and he has a couple of rough games, the calls for the backup quarterback will be there. But we'll go down the line. To answer your question, true. I would be surprised if Kaliakmanis is not the starter against Howard. He's committed yet. We're already talking about this.
Yeah.
I'm going to say false and break down this quote. Both quarterbacks are going to play against Howard. This is a quote we're going to hear in like August 24th. It's going to be one that I think we're going to hear. Maybe they could bring back Johnny Langan to take one snap like they did against Boston College a couple of years ago to have him as a starter. All right, next true or false? True or false? Gavin Wimsatt will be in the transfer portal before summer. Is Gavin going to stick around, Pat? True or false?
I think so. I think he will.
Yeah.
I think your question, the answer to your question is false. I think he's sticking around.
Brian?
I think it's possible he sticks around. I think there's a good chance he sticks around.
Mm-hmm.
I will say false. Or sorry, wait. The question was he's going to be.
He will be in the transfer portal. So
I think the answer is true.
You think he's going to be in the transfer portal?
I think not necessarily in this window.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a world where he sticks around for spring camp. They have the battle. He feels like he's on the wrong end of it, and he says, "I'm going somewhere else where I could be the starter." So I think true.
Okay, I'm going with false. I've seen no evidence to suggest yet that he is going to. So until then, I'm going to believe that he wants to stay and compete. All right, true or false? Fran Brown is turning Syracuse into an orange-colored Death Star. Pat, there's a lot of Fran Brown hysteria. Are you buying it? True or false?
Have you seen Syracuse's schedule for 2020?
I have seen it. Yes,
it is ridiculously easy. I mean, they're gonna be like 9-3.
Yeah.
I think there is definitely cause for concern. I think about all the guys that are on Rutgers now that are stars that we're talking about coming back. Fran Brown recruited most of those defensive guys.
Whoa, that's a great point. Wow. Okay, Brian.
Why are we talking about Syracuse? Who cares about Syracuse, Steve?
Right.
All we have is several 10-page threads on every message board about Rutgers, and every tweet and story we write, there's 70 replies saying, who cares about Syracuse? They're not a rival. We totally don't care about Syracuse. Stop talking about Syracuse, Steve. Stop, please. All they did was get the quarterback that as soon as he hit the portal, every Rutgers fan was begging him to come to Rutgers. All they did was get a bunch of highly rated kids, and we totally don't care about Fran Brown and Syracuse at Rutgers. But I'm being serious. I don't care about Syracuse. I haven't thought about this for 7 hours a day for the past 3 weeks or anything. What was your question again?
I don't remember. I think the question was whether or not it's a little overblown here. The Fran Brown to Syracuse hysteria. They did get, what's his face, the quarterback.
Kyle McCord.
Thank you. It is crazy. I do think I was crazy. I was surprised by that. At the same token, clearly there's something going on there. Like, I don't think he didn't leave Ohio State because he wanted a better situation. He left Ohio State because Ryan Day had his foot between his butt cracks and kicked him out the door. Clearly, that's what happened there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how he ended up there. It's very, very strange. Don't quite get it. But to the broader point, like, I just don't think you can't worry about this until he proves that he can build this long term. Someone pointed out that every coach has a bump. Like Chris Ash had a bump when he took over. You know, it's like everybody has this moment. I mean, Fran Brown has not run a program. Running a program now, and you're seeing it with Greg Schiano, like recruiting is still a major part of it, but there are like 53 other things now. There's the portal, there's administration. Like Greg Schiano's never been more of a CEO Well, that's why he needs his coordinators to stay, because someone has to coach the football team while he's raising money for NIL. So before you get crazy and get carried away with Fran Brown, I got to see it over a year or two. That's what I have to say about Fran.
Two things. Did Chris Ash ever get a 5-star quarterback? Just remind me. I don't remember. Did he?
Well, this is a different time, dude. You're pulling him out of the portal. I get it. Yeah, of course. I was stunned by that. Absolutely. You got to. Yeah, I get it.
I'm just making sure I'm not misremembering the Chris Ash era when they had a 5-star quarterback.
So are you here to tell me that because he got Kyle McCord, you think that this is going to be some sort of regional power based on 2 weeks of good stuff up there in Syracuse? You think that he is turned the corner, that Syracuse is now going to be the beast of the East? This is what you're telling me about what's happening up there?
What I'm telling you is that these false equivalencies of Chris Ash recruiting, because you're not the first person to bring this up about the Chris Ash bump. Bo Melton is not a 5-star.
Everybody gets a bump. Everybody gets a bump.
Everybody gets a 5-star quarterback in the portal in their first week, Steve. Obviously, everyone does. Here's where I will agree with you. And this point has been brought up a bunch. They have no coaches on that staff who have ever called a single play. They are coaches who are elite recruiters who get a ton of talent, but the major question is, can they make that talent play good football, right? That, to me, is a very fair question. And I think the answer to that is it could very well turn up to be a catastrophe. If in 12 months from now, we find out Syracuse went 4-8 and Kyle McCord regressed significantly and all these highly ranked kids they get don't end up playing well, I wouldn't be surprised. But my point is that to downplay the fact they got a 5-star quarterback, they got a 4-star wide receiver out of Georgia, they're getting a bunch of highly rated high school kids. There is a buzz in Syracuse football that there has not been in quite some time, I think is a bit disingenuous. And I think comparing anybody to Chris Ash in any form should be, it's completely unfair to compare anybody to Chris Ash. Okay. Fran Brown is not Chris Ash. And Chris Ash could have taken over 1,000 programs over the next 1,000 years. He would have never landed a 5-star quarterback.
I know you're just missing again. You're missing the point being that a bump early on, and I get it. It is a significant bump. I understand that, but I'm just not prepared to, think that he is building Georgia up, and it's still a middling ACC program until proven otherwise. It's
Rutgers
Boston College with bad colors. All right, let's move on. The best Christmas movie, Elf. True or false, Pat? That's a good transition.
Great question. Thank you for bringing this back to
true or false?
Planet Earth. False.
Are you going to tell me what is? Are you just going to?
Christmas Carol. Muppets Christmas Carol is the best Christmas movie.
Gonzo reference. Okay.
Or Home Alone, Lost in New York, the second one.
Jeez, those are two bad choices, but okay.
Oh man.
All right. Brian, best Christmas Carol. Is it best Christmas movie? Is it Elf? True or false?
Pat stole the answer from under my breath. Home Alone 2 is the greatest Christmas movie of all time. Without a doubt. I watch it every Christmas. And do the Rockettes count? Is that a movie? I was watching the Rockettes on Wednesday at 2 p.m. I get out of the place. There's 3% battery left on my phone, and I see Pat Lanny talking about a new contract for Greg Schiano and Kirk Shiraka and Joe Harris-Simiak, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like, obviously they didn't. I'm not an idiot, and I'm not that self-absorbed. But I got to think, did they just wait for me to get into the Rockettes? Like, was somebody watching me in the bushes of New York City street to watch me get into the Rockettes before they dropped this news? What's going on here?
Well, it is a garden. You know that Dolan has cameras there, so clearly it's possible that they had cameras trained on you when you walked in there. Absolutely. Yeah.
The Rockets were great, by the way, if anybody was curious.
Just to clarify, Brian is on his phone 24/7 for this 1 hour window where he was seeing the Christmas Spectacular. It was a shocking revelation.
How'd you like the Rockettes?
Lovely. I thought it went too fast. Honestly, when they were finished, I wanted more.
Wow.
I wanted more. It was only an hour and a half. You hear about the cans and all that fun stuff, but to see it in person, the coordination, the way they're all like in sync, really, really is very impressive.
Okay. All right. The best Christmas movie, for the record, is It's a Wonderful Life. And there'll be no debate on that. Just
clear that. What a boomer answer, man.
No, no,
boomer
it's just a universal answer.
Oh,
And if you
God.
wanted even more, you want to go a little bit recent, A Christmas Story. You can use that one too.
Of course,
you can use that one. But those are 1 and 1A for me, and I don't care if you call me a boomer. That's fine because it's true.
Yeah.
What do you, Seth Davis? You sit around on Christmas when Seth Davis is live tweeting "It's a Wonderful Life," and you're like, "Oh my God, I can't wait! This is my favorite tradition."
Seth Davis, really? I didn't know that. Okay. And finally, true or false? It's hard to shoot a good video of a miner from behind a tree. Pat, what do you think? Is that true or false? Is that difficult? I mean, you've got the branches there. I mean, it's a tricky angle, right?
Yeah. Definitely tricky. True.
All right, so I'm not even going to let Brian answer this, but this is obviously we've got to talk about this. It's a serious thing. I made a little joke, made a little light of it there, of course, but when we asked for insider questions, about 80% of our insider questions were about this. Brandon Knight took a shot at Brian on the Twitter. If you're not following us on Twitter, God bless you. Thank you for not being on social media, especially that social media hellscape. Totally understand it. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I feel like we need to address it because it's out there and we didn't put it out there. It really leaves us no choice but to talk about this. And I just want to make it abundantly clear before Brian even has to say a word about this, that Brian did nothing wrong here. Like if you're wondering, well, there must be two sides of the story, just know that there's not. There's not nothing. He did nothing wrong. And to the point that Brian has received apologies from both Pat Hobbs and from Steve Peichel on behalf of the Rutgers Athletic Department about this. And Brandon Knight made a defamatory statement about Brian shooting video of miners in bushes and trees. It just could not be any more false. It's a little disgusting. I very rarely have been as angry as I was on Friday when I saw this pop up. We weren't gonna respond to it until he doubled down on it, and it just kind of left us no choice. And there's a lot about this to unpack. Brandon, if you're listening, and I told you this when I talked to you, you should delete your social media. I mean, it's just clearly that this is, you're not helping the program with this stuff to begin with. And if you think we're going to stand here and let you do this without responding and without defending ourselves, you're just wrong. So that's what happened here. Brian, I don't know if you need to say more than that, but go ahead, please. If you've got something you want to tell the audience, I completely understand.
I just want to thank people who reached out over the last very strange days. Thank you. I think everybody that defended me, you included, Steve, Pat, you were there to support all the people that tweeted and texted and DM'd, and the fans who fought back against the other fans who understandably sided with the head coach of the team they support, of a key coach of a team they support. I get it. I appreciate the fans that push back. I want to make it abundantly clear. I have never stood in the bushes for a story. I have never filmed a minor for my own personal entertainment behind the bushes. Okay. I follow to characterize it like that is complete mischaracterization, because if I were to do that, Brandon Knight's entire job is to text minors for hours on end, visit them at their homes, and he's going to fly across state lines tomorrow to watch two minors play basketball against each other. Obviously, it's not weird because that's his job. He's recruiting these kids to play basketball, and it's not weird or creepy because it's my job to write about these kids. By the way, in a positive light for Rutgers, because they're great basketball players coming to play for Rutgers.
The biggest story in recent Rutgers history. We had to cover it, and we covered it really well. And I guess I come back to that, and this is what kind of blew me away here. It's like, here's this happy moment of nothing but positive coverage. Well, Brandon Knight created a negative headline in the middle of this. I mean, what is that? Like he claimed on Twitter, he's like, well, look, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for Rutgers. Yeah, well, when Awful Announcing, predictably, it's a website with 300,000 Twitter followers, picked it up. It didn't write Brandon Knight or write Rutgers associate head coach takes a shot at a reporter. And it's just, this is what he did. And Pat, I got to come back to this. And again, I don't belabor this, but it is pushing it forward. Like, are they prepared for, like, is this staff, are they prepared for what's coming? Like this was a big takeaway too when I was thinking about this. Like right now you've got like 5 or 6 guys who cover this team. Like what's going to happen? Like what's going to happen when there's 70 people here because there's two NBA lottery picks in the lineup and there's expectations and there's suddenly it's a national story and you're picked to win the Big Ten maybe, or you're certainly picked to have the rookie of the year in the Big Ten. And suddenly everyone in the country's following to see what's going to happen. How are you going to be ready for this if you're firing back at Ryan for shooting a video of the head coach shaking hands with the state's number one prospect in a lit gymnasium? Why are you going to respond to this if you're firing off tweets at Richard Kent? This is stuff that Brandon Knight's done on social media.
Right,
and look,
right,
I'm sorry.
Right. And this is what it all comes down to. And just to make this very simple, Brandon Knight needs to be worried about Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey and their prospects and keeping them happy, and not worried about what a reporter is doing. Right? Like that's his job. Stay in your lane and don't ruin everything. Because like you said, there was an embarrassment on social media. And if you can't handle 5 people covering this team, your eyes are gonna be just bulging out of your head when there's 500 covering you at in the NCAA tournament, and TV shows coming at you, and talking heads and pundits that are gonna be talking negatively about this program if things don't go well. So if you can't handle, a reporter shooting a video, try handling, Shaquille O'Neal saying that this is the biggest failure in the program's history, right? Like that's what you're dealing with.
Yes, and it's really going to be an eye-opening thing. And again, Brandon, you want to be a head coach someplace, like this is part of it, man. This is part of it, and it's something that he pushed back on the idea that he didn't need to listen to people around him. But there's a lot of good people at Rutgers, and we talk to them all the time, like about our coverage, like just to make sure, like you think, well, just this is not how it happens. This is 25 years. We've never had a beef airing in public about how we cover things. It happens. We have a constant conversation, a constant dialogue with the people at Rutgers about what should be covered, what shouldn't, what headlines are too negative, positive. And a lot of times we say, you're right. We got this one wrong. And I hope that they see it as productive and we move on to the next thing. Yeah, there's a reason why it doesn't happen out in the open like this. And it was just a really odd scene. And I just come back to that broader point, like an odd scene at what should be like a really happy time at Rutgers athletics. Like what are we doing?
I just have a couple things I want to, before we wrap this up. A lot of people asking like why Brandon and I didn't have a conversation. I just wanted to make things clear. I was at the game at Don Bosco. I arrived about 45 minutes before. I sat in the balcony, a couple spots over from Ron Harper Sr., away from everyone. Steve Peichel and Brandon Knight came after I did. They said Steve Peichel said hello to me. I then later spoke to Brandon Knight for about 15 minutes at the tail end of the game. They were well aware I was there. They probably saw me filming the scene as I did. I was there in person. If they were worried about me posting a video, they could have told me in person, hey, don't post this. Brandon Knight has my phone number. He has my Twitter DMs open. We have DM'd before. This is not the first time he's taken issue with something I've written or tweeted, and it's fine. I'm always open to discussing things privately as they should be discussed. I never would have imagined this breaking out. He's attacked Jim Boeheim, Richard Kent, and now me on Twitter. So I am part of the Mount Rushmore of people on his show.
That's a good three for dinner. Who you want to bring off? That'd be a good dinner conversation. I'd take that table. All right, that's good. Let's move on. And again, I didn't want to talk about it as much as we did, but obviously we had to get off our chest, and we did. All right. So let's go. Let's dive into the Rutgers insider questions. We got a bunch of them on that, like I mentioned. Some other good ones, and this was a really interesting one about the Death Star, and it's kind of been forgotten. Not the Syracuse Death Star, the building that Rutgers was going to build. And someone asks, does Greg Schiano's new contract extension have the stipulation that a football-only facility will be built given the NIL landscape? Obviously, that was a huge deal the first time around. It was in the contract. I had forgotten all about it, to be honest with you, Pat. You went back and read the extension. What did you find?
It was copy and pasted from the original contract to this contract. It's the same exact language, and it basically says that Pat Hobbs and Greg Schiano have to privately raise 50% of the cost of what the building is going to be. Once they get to 50% privately, the Board of Governors will kick in and vote on the rest, and then it'll be constructed in a reasonable amount of time. So no, there are really no changes here, but there is still the stipulation there.
It just feels like if, as soon as I lose 30 pounds, like they're trying to raise this 50% now for, I mean, since the original contract. I mean, out of anywhere, we have no idea how close they are to that. I mean, are we just kicking the can down the road?
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Right. Every time we ask about it, it's all, we're focused on the season. We'll talk about that at the end of the season. And it's just one delay after the other. And that's kind of how the whole facilities are mostly addressed. But yeah, so I don't, we got one game left and then it's time to ask the question again. So I guess time will tell.
Right.
They're in a tough spot in this modern day where there are not that many funds to go around, and it's a push and pull between NIL and facilities. And I think very clearly the Rutgers coaching staff believes that NIL is most important. That's how they were able to keep a lot of these key players. It's how they're able to get a guy like Dymere Miller. And I think they're probably right in the grander scheme of things that you're going to be more successful keeping better players than improving where you practice. So I think unless a mega donor comes in and decides to donate to the facilities, I think this will kind of just slowly chug along until they eventually reach that 50% mark.
All right. Good related question to that about the fundraising. And it begins based on a recent article in the Wall Street Journal giving examples how big donors try to influence their college athletic departments for whom they hire and facilities to be built. With Phil Knight at Oregon, an example, who are the biggest donors influences to Rutgers athletics and or by individual sport? Who does Hobbs, Schiano, Peichel answer on the first ring? That's a great question. And obviously we were wondering, a lot of it, if there's somebody behind the scenes pulling strings with Dylan Harper. We haven't been able to find it if that is in fact the case. Certainly the names, Greg Brown is the biggest one. I think you would look at Jeff and Amy Towers, you would look at Ron Garudi. There are names that you've heard a million times who are people who have been very generous over the years to this. There's no Phil Knight, though, I guess. It's the big point to make.
It could be Bernard Marcus of Home Depot fame.
He is not at this point, no. He could be, but he's not. I do wonder, and it's funny, there's a lot of buzz that perhaps people in Wall Street types were involved with the Dylan Harper stuff. We're all speculating here, but that would be, Rutgers has had success finding people who aren't directly related to Rutgers to support Rutgers athletics. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Certainly the guy who owns Fanatics, and of course I'm going to blank on his name, but he's a big time New York investor, entrepreneur type guy. Clearly he saw Dylan Harper as someone he wanted to be associated with his company. That would have been true had Dylan Harper gone to Duke. I get it, but still, I wonder if they've brought it out, Pat, trying to be creative here to find other sources outside of just the Rutgers alum community as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I've always heard of like how in Olympic sports that there's a great pipeline of transfers that go from Ivy League schools to Rutgers for a year as a grad transfer and then go and work on Wall Street. So they're laying this pipeline of at least, successfully transitioning to professional life. It'd be really interesting to see how that, if that impacts at all fundraising and donations and things like that, because building those connections is one thing. And then maybe those athletes become the next great Wall Street investors and they say, oh, yeah, I owe a lot to Rutgers. Maybe that's how you build the pipeline.
His name is Michael Rubin.
Mike Rubin. There you go. Exactly.
And the other place is Adidas. We've talked about this before. If you see Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper signing Adidas deals when they arrive at Rutgers, then we'll know that they played a big part in this as well.
Absolutely. All right. Good question, though. And one that we're constantly asking ourselves. All right. Very specific basketball question. Who do you predict to be the starting five next year? And predictions on Cliff coming back for one more ride. All right. Cliff is not coming back. I think we're pretty clear on that. The starting five next year is kind of fascinating because I can't do it for Saturday, much less next year with any reasonable. I can put two people in there. I mean, I think it's pretty clear you could have Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey in your starting five next year. Brian, you want to fill out the rest of that starting five?
So it depends. I'll give you two ideas. A traditional starting five with a center. I would say Jeremiah Williams, Dylan Harper, Mawot Mag, Ace Bailey, And whatever center you get out of the portal, I'm not sure Antoine Woolfolk will be ready to be the starting center for a team of that caliber, though certainly is not impossible that a junior he takes over Cliff's place.
Lathan Somerville can't be a starter.
He's not
ready?
a freshman. He's not good enough as a freshman to start. No.
Okay.
And there's the 5% chance that Cliff decides to come back and he starts. I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm just saying if he does decide to come back, he would obviously be the starter. And then there's the small ball modern day thing that they could try if they wanted. They could go Jeremiah Williams, Dylan Harper, Muat Mag, Gavin Griffiths, Ace Bailey. I think that is a very interesting starting five. I think that Muat Mag's defense would and Jeremiah Williams' defense would be able to. I just don't think Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey are going to become these elite defenders from day one. And Gavin Griffiths has obviously struggled a bit defensively so far. So I think you're going to need strong defenders in the lineup to make up for that. But I think that would be a very intriguing five in my mind. But obviously, the portal is still a thing. You could maybe add more talented players if you need to. Who knows what it'll look like? But from where we stand right now, I think that's a pretty good place to start at.
Yeah, I think you need in the portal, you need an experience. And I've said this here before, like a Matt Alaco, Princeton, experienced glue guy, someone who can look at this lineup and say, hey, look, there's a lot of talent there. I want to come here and be a leader, be part of what's going to be a tournament team. Pat, when I'm talking about, I don't know who that guy is. If there's more than if there's only there might only be one Matt Alaco out there. I get it, but trying to find someone like that who you can plug in and say, look, here's some intangibles too.
I mean, I'm not going to go out there and say you got to get the biggest name in the portal, like Hunter Dickinson or something like that. But a guy that can just be the final piece of this team is such an attractive position to be in that you'd think that would just be such an easy recruiting pitch and very easy to see as the recruit. Okay, I could be this guy to put the final pieces of this team together. So I think that's a great idea.
Right. Good question, though. All right, let me see if I got anything else before we sign off here. Well, I have one football question, and as I go over, Alex and Freehold want to know, what are the odds of some of the younger guys in the two deep transferring out of the football program with so many starters coming back? Are there any guys that were in danger of that? I haven't gotten the sense, Pat, that we're really looking at guys who would be contributors who are leaving.
Yeah, I know a theory out there is Sam Brown probably wants more playing time at running back. Maybe he's a guy that had a great opportunity, maybe lost that with the way that Kyle Monungai played. I don't have any indication that he's unhappy at Rutgers. I think he's very happy at Rutgers. But I think if a player that fits that mold, it would be Sam Brown in my mind. And then, I can't really think of any other, two deep guys that were really, could be in there. But so I think it's just more about development and we'll see where it goes.
You don't know until it happens. One of those deals too. Like some of these things just spring, obviously with the basketball situation, no one who guessed who was in the portal there. And to the point, it opens up again in the spring where we'd have this conversation again. So we shall see.
Well, I would add, the positions on defense would be the ones like defensive end with Aaron Lewis and Wesley Bailey coming back. A guy like Kenny Fletcher, who's going to be in his third year, maybe he thought he'd have a more prominent role instead of a third down guy. Maybe he thinks he can have a more prominent role somewhere else. I don't think.
How many snaps did he play last year, though? Right, he played a bunch of.
I'd have to pull it up, but I mean, he might have played a bunch of snaps. Maybe he wants to be an all-down kind of guy instead of a third-down kind of guy, right? Renee Conga, a guy who's really emerged, but again, he has kind of some jams because of Aaron Lewis and Wesley Bailey coming back. I'm not saying they're leaving. I'm just saying that those guys kind of fit the mold of what this question is asking. As for running back, I think Aaron Young was the sacrificial lamb at that position because of Kyle Monungai coming back. He didn't have much of a lane to playing time this year. Obviously, with Kyle Monungai coming back, with Jayshon Benjamin coming back, with a couple of running backs coming in as freshmen in the 24 class, the kind of room got a little tight and he decided to leave. I think Sam Brown could very well be a change of pace back next year now that he's 2 years removed from the foot injury.
Yeah, he could absolutely challenge for playing time if he is completely healthy, as we well know too. So good problems to have. All right, what else we got? Anything else, fellas? That's feel like a full show. We're gonna obviously be back later in the week to talk about the preview the bowl game officially, but do we have any other things we need to cover today?
Women's basketball lost to Virginia Tech in a ranked game at home. Feels like they're taking steps forward from last year, but they're still not quite there where they can challenge a ranked team. But it feels like Coach Washington has the program in the right direction, I would say.
Okay. Wrestling?
Wrestling's on a little bit of a break through the new year. So no updates there, but things will get really busy, like I said, in the new year. So look forward to that.
If you're interested, there's a huge game. Sporting's playing Porto today in the afternoon. I can dive into that if you'd like.
And you're getting on a plane. This is even better, right? You're flying down to see Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. Tell us about that. Completely forgot about this.
Yes, good point. That's more pertinent to our situation. Yes, I am flying across state lines to watch two minors play basketball. Should be a very fun game. The game is, according to Rutgers rivals, Richie Schneiderite, who is also going to travel to watch this game, will be the two Rutgers beat guys there.
Is he really? Wow.
Okay. He is, yes. We've discussed our travel plans before. He said this game will be broadcast live on NBA TV, so Rutgers fans at home could watch this game live if you have that in your subscription package. Should be a fun event and just tremendous PR for Rutgers that a national TV broadcast will be talking about Rutgers. These two prominent players are going to Rutgers. I think this is a dream scenario, and it'll be fun to see these guys play together all summer, played in all these circuits. Now they're finally going to play against each other before obviously playing together at Rutgers. And they'll obviously both be playing at Rutgers at the end of the month for the Battle Showcase. Just a lot of interesting things going on with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, and I think Rutgers fans should really, really, really enjoy every step of this winter and the next 12 months, because you never know when something like this will ever come again.
Do either of these teams have I know the answer for Don Bosco, but does either of these teams have a player, a second high major player? Or is it just for Ace and Dylan that this game's on NBA TV?
They don't have any other, they're not Montverde, who has 5 high major players. Right. I don't think any of the other teams have top 5 players. I think Don Bosco, for example, has an interesting 7-foot sophomore who is going to get some high major interest. I'm not sure if he's going to be a top tier player, but I think he'll be there. I'm sure McEachern has a couple guys who are getting D1 looks, but no, this is going to NBA TV strictly because of 2 Rutgers commits, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey.
How about what a time to be alive. Incredible. All right. Look forward to reading your stories from down there. Don't hide behind any palm trees while you're there.
I have a portable bush I bring with me everywhere.
Portable bush. I love it. We laugh because we love. All right. Everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for hearing us out on all this stuff. And we'll be back later in the week to talk about the bowl game. Thanks again.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.